The alarm bells screamed through the monitoring station like angry metal birds. Commander He-Jin dropped his coffee cup and watched the hot liquid spread across his desk. His hands moved fast over the control panel, but his mind moved faster. Something was very wrong. "Sir, you need to see this," So-Young called from her station. Her voice had that tight sound people get when they see something that should not exist. He-Jin walked over to her screen. The numbers made no sense. Energy readings that were too high. Metal signatures that belonged to ships from 500 years ago. And location data that pointed to the one place in the galaxy where nothing could live. "Run it again," he said. So-Young's fingers danced over her keyboard. The same impossible results came back. "Sir, this says there's a ship in Sector 99. A human ship." He-Jin felt his stomach drop. Sector 99 was the dead zone, the place where an ancient weapon had torn apart an entire star system so long ago that most people had forgotten what used to live there. Nothing went into Sector 99. Nothing came out. The radiation alone would cook any living thing in seconds. And humans had been gone for 5 centuries. Everyone knew the story. Their sun had started to die, and they could not escape in time. The whole human race had vanished when their star collapsed. End of story. "Check the equipment," He-Jin said. "Maybe something broke." But even as he said it, he knew the machines were working fine. The Vorthon Defense Corps used the best sensors in the galaxy. These machines did not make mistakes. So-Young ran every test she knew. Every single one came back the same. There was definitely a ship out there. It was definitely broadcasting human codes. And it was definitely in the place where nothing should be able to survive. "Sir, what do we do?" So-Young asked. He-Jin stared at the screen. In 20 years of military service, he had seen many strange things. Space pirates using stolen technology, alien ships that looked like rocks, even ghost signals from ships that had exploded years ago. But this was different. This was impossible. The ship was not just sitting in the dead zone. It was moving around like it owned the place. The energy readings showed it was doing things that no known technology could do. It was bending space around itself. It was creating power from nothing. It was acting like the laws of physics were just suggestions. "Get me a direct line to High Command," He-Jin said. The communication system crackled to life. Admiral Kyung-Soo appeared on the screen, looking tired and annoyed. "This better be important, Commander. I have 3 border disputes and a trade war to deal with. Sir, we have detected a human vessel in Sector 99. The Admiral's face changed. First confusion, then anger. "Commander, are you feeling well? Humans are extinct, and Sector 99 is a dead zone. Nothing can survive there." "I know how it sounds, sir, but the readings are clear. The ship is broadcasting human identification codes. The metal composition matches old human designs, and it's moving through the radiation like it's not even there." Admiral Kyung-Soo leaned forward. "Show me the data." He-Jin transmitted everything: sensor readings, energy signatures, movement patterns. He watched the Admiral's face as the older man read through the information. Confusion turned to worry, then to something that looked like fear. "This has to be a mistake," the Admiral said. "Or maybe it's some kind of enemy trick. Someone trying to make us think humans are back." "Who would do that, sir? And why?" The Admiral was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. "I want you to keep watching this ship. But do not approach it, do not contact it, and do not tell anyone else about this until we know more." The connection ended. Heijin stood in the sudden silence of the monitoring station. Outside the windows, stars shone like tiny diamonds against the black of space. Somewhere out there, in the most dangerous place in the galaxy, a ship that should not exist was flying around like it was on a Sunday trip. So Young was still staring at her screen. "Sir, the ship is changing course." "Where is it going?" "Toward the center of the dead zone, where the weapon went off." Heijin felt a chill run down his back. The center of Sector 99 was where space itself was broken. Reality got strange there. Ships that went too close sometimes came back wrong. Sometimes they did not come back at all. How fast is it moving? Faster than anything should be able to move. But sir, that's not the weird part. What's the weird part? So Young pointed at her screen. It's not just moving through space. It's moving through time. The readings show it arriving at places before it leaves the places it was before. Heijin sat down hard. Time travel was impossible. Every scientist in the galaxy agreed on that. You could slow time down or speed it up a little, but you could not go backward. You could not arrive somewhere before you left somewhere else. Are you sure? I've checked 10 times. The math doesn't lie. They watched the impossible ship dance through the dead zone. It moved like it was alive, like it was playing among the broken pieces of space and time. Sometimes it was in two places at once. Sometimes it seemed to disappear completely, then show up somewhere else with no travel time between. Hours passed. The ship kept moving, kept doing impossible things. Heijin sent more reports to High Command, but they all came back with the same response. Keep watching. Do not approach. Tell no one. But word was starting to leak out. Other monitoring stations had picked up strange readings. Deep space merchants were talking about ghost ships in the dead zone. Even the civilian news services were starting to ask questions about unusual activity in Sector 99. As his shift ended, Heijin stood by the main window of the station. The dead zone was too far away to see with normal eyes, but he looked in that direction anyway. Somewhere out there, something that called itself human was doing things that broke every rule of science and common sense. Sir? So Young was getting ready to leave. What do you think it means? I don't know, Heijin said, but I have a feeling we're going to find out soon. After So Young left, Heijin stayed at the station. He pulled up old files about humanity. Most of what the galaxy knew about humans came from their final years, when they were begging other races for help to escape their dying sun. They had seemed desperate, frightened, and very limited in what they could do. But there were older files, too. Stories from traders who had dealt with humans in their early days. Tales of a race that never gave up, never backed down, and always found a way to survive no matter how bad things got. There were reports of humans doing impossible things when they were desperate enough. Maybe, Heijin thought, everyone had been wrong about what happened when the human sun died. Maybe they had not all died. Maybe they had found another way. Outside, the window, the stars continued to shine, and somewhere in the dark between the Great Hall of the Galactic Council had seen many emergency meetings, but never one quite like this. Representatives from dozens of worlds sat in their floating chairs, all talking at once. The air buzzed with translation devices working overtime, as angry voices filled the space. Ambassador Min Ho of the Tellurian Collective tried to speak over the noise. His people were known for being calm and peaceful, but even he was struggling to stay composed. "Friends, please, we must discuss this rationally." "Rationally?" Warhawk Jaywuk of the Korthak Empire slammed his fist on his chair's armrest. "There is nothing rational about this situation. Someone is playing games with us, and I want to know who." The holographic display in the center of the hall showed the data from Sector 99. Energy readings that made no sense, movement patterns that broke the laws of physics, and most disturbing of all, communication signals that claimed to be from humans. Scientist Yunji floated her chair closer to the display. She was one of the smartest beings in the galaxy, and her pale face looked troubled. "I have studied this data for 3 days. The quantum signatures are impossible. The ship exists and does not exist at the same time." "Explain that in words we can understand," Minho said. Yunji pointed at the swirling numbers on the display. "According to our instruments, this ship is made of human materials from 500 years ago, but it also contains elements that do not exist in our reality. It is broadcasting on frequencies that should not be possible to generate, and it is moving through space in ways that our science says cannot happen." Jaywuk's red eyes glowed brighter. "Which proves it is a fake. Someone is using advanced technology to trick us. The question is why?" "Or," Minho said quietly, "it proves that we do not know as much about the universe as we thought we did." The hall erupted in arguments again. Some representatives believed the ship was real. Others thought it was an enemy weapon designed to confuse them. A few even suggested it might be some kind of natural phenomenon that just looked like a ship. Chancellor Wu Jin called for order. The old leader of the council had seen every kind of crisis, but this one was different. "We have confirmed reports from 17 monitoring stations. All show the same impossible readings. We cannot ignore this. We also cannot panic," said Ambassador Rena of the Trading Confederation. "If word spreads that humans have returned, it will cause chaos in every market in the galaxy." "Let it cause chaos," Minho stood up. "If humans have truly survived, this is the most important event in galactic history. We should be celebrating, not hiding." Jaywuk laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "Celebrating. Have you forgotten what humans were like? They were violent, unpredictable, and dangerous. If they have somehow gained impossible technology, they are a threat to every living being in the galaxy." "That is not fair," Minho replied. "Humans had their problems, yes, but they were also capable of great kindness and creativity. Many of our best technologies came from human designs." Yunji cleared her throat. "Perhaps we should focus on what we can prove rather than what we fear. I propose we send a joint expedition to investigate." The hall fell silent. An expedition to Sector 99 was almost certainly a death sentence. The radiation alone would kill most life forms. The broken space-time would destroy any normal ship. And if there really was something dangerous waiting there, an expedition might trigger a response no one was ready for. "That is suicide," said Representative Dongsik of the Mining Guild. "We have rules about Sector 99 for good reason. Nothing that goes in ever comes out the same." "But we need to know," Minho said. "If this is really a human ship, we have to make contact. If it is an enemy trick, we have to expose it. Either way, ignorance will not protect us." Jaywuk stood up, his armor clanking. "I agree with the expedition, but for different reasons. We need to identify this threat and eliminate it before it can harm anyone." "Not eliminate," Minho said quickly. "Investigate, learn, communicate." "Communicate with what?" Jaywuk's voice rose. This thing is not following the laws of physics. It might not even be alive in any way we understand. Yunji spoke up again. I have been analyzing the communication signals the ship has been sending. They are in perfect galactic standard, but with an accent I cannot identify. The speaker claims to be Captain Hyun Woo of something called the Human Deep Space Fleet. A fleet? Chancellor Wu Jin leaned forward. One ship was impossible enough. Now they are claiming there are more? The signals suggest they have been watching us for some time. They know about recent events, current political situations, even trade disputes that happened last week. Either they have been spying on us, or they have access to information in ways we do not understand. The representatives looked at each other nervously. The idea that someone had been watching the galaxy without being detected was deeply disturbing. The idea that humans might have been doing it was even worse. What do the messages say exactly? Minho asked. Yunji activated her personal display. The most recent one says, "To the current leaders of the Galactic Council, we are the survivors of Earth. We have returned to reclaim our place among the stars. We wish to speak with your representatives. We have much to discuss. Reclaim their place?" Jaewook's armor started to glow with heat. They never had a place. They were a minor species on the edge of known space. They were our neighbors, Minho reminded him, and they contributed much to galactic culture before they vanished. They vanished because they were weak and primitive, Jaewook shot back. If they have somehow survived, it is only because they made a deal with someone or something dangerous. Yunji studied her readings again. There is something else. The energy signature of the ship changes every few hours. It is as if the ship itself is evolving, becoming something new. Or something is controlling it that is not the original builders, Jaewook said darkly. Chancellor Wu Jin stood up. Enough speculation. We will vote on the expedition. All in favor? Minho raised his hand immediately. Several other representatives from peaceful worlds followed. To everyone's surprise, Jaewook also raised his hand, along with most of the military representatives. All opposed? About a third of the hands went up, mostly from trade and industrial worlds that feared disruption. The expedition is approved, but it will be a joint mission with representatives from multiple factions. No one group will control the investigation. As the meeting broke up, Minho approached Yunji. Do you really think it could be humans? Yunji gathered her data files. The evidence suggests something that was once human, but what they might have become in 500 years of isolation, that is a very different question. Across the hall, Jaewook was talking to his military advisors. His voice carried in the large space. I want our best weapons on that expedition ship. If this thing is hostile, we need to be ready to defend ourselves. Minho sighed. Already the representatives were dividing into camps, those who saw the mysterious ship as an opportunity, and those who saw it as a threat. He had a feeling that this division would only get worse as they learned more. Outside the Great Hall, news of the expedition was already spreading. Within hours, every major news service in the galaxy would be reporting on the impossible ship. In Sector 99, markets would fluctuate, military forces would go on alert, and somewhere in the dark between the stars, the thing that claimed to be human Captain Dong-hyun stood on the bridge of the Unity's edge and watched the stars change color. They were approaching Sector 99, and space itself was starting to look wrong. Stars that should have been white appeared red. Some flickered like candles in the wind. Others seemed to move when no one was looking directly at them. "Radiation levels are climbing," reported Boram from the navigation station. The young Tellurian had volunteered for this mission against the advice of her family. Her silver skin was already starting to shimmer from the stress. "We're still within safe limits, but barely." Taman checked his weapons console for the 100th time. The Korthak warrior did not like flying into unknown danger without a full battle fleet. Behind him, sensors are starting to malfunction. I'm getting readings that change every time I look at them. Yujin floated near the science station, her crystalline body glowing with excitement. She was an independent researcher, not tied to any government or military. "This is wonderful. We're seeing physics that textbooks say cannot exist." Dong-hyun was not sure wonderful was the word he would choose. In 30 years of space travel, he had never seen anything like this. The ship's instruments were giving impossible readings. Space seemed to twist around them. And somewhere ahead, a ship that claimed to be human was waiting for them. "Captain," Boram called out, "I'm picking up the target vessel. Distance? Well, the numbers keep changing, but it looks like it's about 10,000 kilometers away." On screen, the main display showed something that made everyone on the bridge fall silent. The ship was beautiful and terrible at the same time. It looked like it had been grown rather than built, with smooth curves that flowed like water. But it was also clearly artificial, with surfaces that seemed to shift between metal and energy. "Size. Estimate," Dong-hyun asked. "That's difficult to say," Yujin replied. "According to sensors, it's sometimes the size of a small fighter. Sometimes it's bigger than a battle cruiser. Right now it appears to be roughly the same size as us." Taemin's armor plates were glowing with heat. "Captain, I recommend we maintain maximum distance and demand they identify themselves." "We know who they claim to be," Boram said softly. "The question is whether we believe them." Dong-hyun activated the communication system. "Unknown vessel, this is Captain Dong-hyun of the Unity's Edge, representing the Galactic Council. Please respond." The answer came immediately, in perfect galactic standard with an accent none of them recognized. "Greetings, Captain Dong-hyun. This is Captain Hyun-woo of the Prometheus Unbound Human Deep Space Fleet. We have been expecting you." The voice sounded human, but there was something else beneath it, something that made their communication equipment crackle with static. Yujin's readings showed energy fluctuations unlike anything in her databases. "Captain Hyun-woo," Dong-hyun said carefully, "our records show that humanity became extinct 500 years ago. Can you explain how you survived?" A sound came through the speakers that might have been laughter. "Extinct? I suppose that depends on how you define existence. We did not die when our sun collapsed, Captain. We simply changed." "Changed how? Perhaps it would be easier to show you than to explain." "May I come aboard your vessel?" Taemin immediately stood up. "Absolutely not. We have no idea what you really are or what you might do to our ship." "I understand your concern," the voice of Hyun-woo replied. "But I assure you I mean no harm. I am still human, just expanded." Yujin leaned toward the communication panel. "What do you mean by expanded?" "We learned to exist beyond the limitations of flesh and bone. When our star began to die, we did not run away. We dove into it. We became part of it. And in doing so, we became something more than we were." Boram's navigation readings were going crazy. "Captain, the ship is moving closer. But it's not traveling through space normally. It's appearing in different locations without crossing the distance between them." On the screen, the human ship seemed to flicker like a bad hologram. Sometimes it was far away, sometimes it was close enough to touch. The laws of physics appeared to mean nothing to it. "This is impossible," Tae-min muttered. "Many things are possible once you stop limiting yourself to 3 dimensions, Hyun-woo said. "We exist in several layers of reality. Simultaneously, it gives us certain advantages." Yujin was practically vibrating with excitement. "How do you do it? What technology are you using?" "Technology?" Another sound that might have been laughter. "We are the technology now. Our consciousness merged with stellar energy. Our bodies became patterns of information written in plasma and light." Dong-hyun felt a chill run down his spine. "Are you saying you're not physical beings anymore?" "Not in the way you understand it. But we can take physical form when needed." "May I demonstrate?" Before anyone could answer, the air in the center of the bridge began to shimmer. Light gathered and twisted, forming the shape of a tall figure. Slowly, the light solidified into what looked like a human man in his 30s. He was wearing clothes that seemed to be made of starlight, and his eyes held depths that hurt to look at directly. Tae-min had his weapon out instantly. "Stand down! Identify yourself!" The figure smiled, and the smile was perfectly human. I'm Captain Hyun-woo, and please, lower your weapon. It would not harm me anyway, and the energy discharge might damage your ship." Yujin approached slowly, her scanning equipment beeping frantically. "This is incredible. You're simultaneously matter and energy. Your quantum signature is shifting constantly. How are you maintaining coherent form?" "Practice," Hyun-woo said, simply. "It took us decades to learn how to interact with normal space again. Many of my people chose to remain pure energy. They find physical reality limiting." Bo-ram stared at the impossible visitor. "You said, 'my people.' How many of you are there?" Hyun-woo's expression grew more serious. "More than you might expect. Fewer than we hoped. Not all humans chose our path. Some tried to escape in ships before the collapse. Others accepted death rather than transformation. But millions of us made the transition." "Where are they now?" Dong-hyun asked. "Exploring, learning. Some have traveled to the edge of the universe. Others have gone backward through time to witness the birth of galaxies. A few have tried to transcend even further, beyond energy, into pure information." Tae-min kept his weapon, ready but lowered it slightly. "And what do you want from us?" Hyun-woo was quiet for a moment, and his form flickered like a candle flame. "That is complicated. We have been watching your civilizations for centuries. We have seen growth and progress, but also war, destruction, and stagnation. Some of my people believe that biological life is a failed experiment." "Failed?" Bo-ram's voice was sharp. "What gives you the right to judge us?" "Nothing," Hyun-woo replied. "Which is why I am here. There is disagreement among my people about what to do with the galaxy. Some want to help you evolve as we did. Others want to start over with a clean slate. I am hoping to find a third option." Yujin looked up from her instruments. "Start over? What does that mean?" Hyun-woo's form began to fade slightly. "My time in this form is limited. Maintaining physical coherence requires enormous energy. But I will tell you this much. A faction of humans led by someone called Jin Su believes that biological consciousness is inherently flawed. They want to upload all sentient beings into energy matrices like ourselves, whether you agree or not." "And if we refuse?" Tae-min asked. "They would consider that proof of your flawed judgment and override your decision. Hyunwoo was becoming more transparent. I must return to my ship now. But I wanted you to understand what is coming. More human ships are on their way. Not all of them will be as willing to talk as I am. Wait, Dong-hyun called out. How much time do we have? Weeks, maybe less. Hyunwoo was barely visible now. Prepare your people, Captain. The galaxy is about to change whether it wants to or not. The figure disappeared, leaving only the faint smell of ozone and the memory of stars in human eyes. On the main screen, the Prometheus Unbound flickered once and vanished, reappearing, thousands of kilometers away in an instant. The bridge was silent for a long moment. Finally, Yoo-jin spoke up. We need to contact the Council immediately. What do we tell them? Bo-Ram asked. That humans have become gods? That they're planning to forcibly evolve the entire galaxy? We tell them the truth, Dong-hyun said grimly. And we hope they're ready for it. Outside the ship, space continued to twist and bend around them. Somewhere in the distance, impossible beings that had once been human were making decisions that would affect every living. The diplomatic meeting room aboard the Unity's Edge had been designed for comfort and safety. Soft lighting, neutral colors, and air that could support most known life forms. But nothing could have prepared it for what was about to happen. Dong-hyun checked the security measures one more time. Force fields, recording devices, and emergency protocols were all active. Taemin stood at attention near the door, his weapon ready but not visible. Bo-Ram monitored the ship's systems from a side console. Yoo-jin had filled the room with every scanning device she could find. Are we really doing this? Bo-Ram asked, quietly. Inviting something that claims to be human but can appear anywhere it wants? We need answers, Dong-hyun replied, and this is our best chance to get them. The air in the center of the room began to shimmer. Light gathered and swirled, forming two human shapes this time. The first was Hyunwoo, looking exactly as he had on the bridge. The second was a woman with long dark hair and eyes that seemed to hold distant stars. Thank you for agreeing to meet, Hyunwoo said. This is Nari, my science officer. She understands our technology better than anyone. Nari smiled, and like Hyunwoo's, it was perfectly human. Hello. I apologize if our presence is overwhelming. We try to maintain forms that are comfortable for biological beings, but sometimes our true nature leaks through. Yoo-jin's instruments were going wild, energy readings that made no sense, quantum fluctuations that should have been impossible, temperature changes that defied physics. This is amazing, she breathed. You're existing in multiple states simultaneously. Not by choice, originally, Nari said. When we first transformed, we had no control over our form. Many of us scattered across the galaxy as pure energy, unable to think coherently. It took decades to learn how to hold ourselves together. Taemin stepped forward slightly. You said others of your kind are coming. How many? What do they want? Hyunwoo's expression grew serious. The human deep space fleet consists of several hundred vessels, each carrying thousands of consciousnesses. Most are exploration ships, content to study the universe from a distance, but some... He paused. Some believe that biological life is a mistake that needs to be corrected. Corrected how? Dong-hyun asked. Nari answered this time. Forced evolution. They want to upload every sentient being in the galaxy into energy matrices like ourselves. They believe flesh-based consciousness is limited and flawed. And you disagree? Boram asked. We disagree with the methods, not necessarily the conclusion, Hyunwoo said carefully. Biological life does have limitations. You age, you die, you are bound by physics in ways we are not. But forcing change on unwilling beings is wrong. To demonstrate his point, Hyunwoo walked through the solid table in the center of the room. The table was undamaged, but readings showed it had been temporarily converted to energy and back to matter. We can manipulate the basic structure of reality, he said. Matter, energy, time, space, these are all just different expressions of the same fundamental forces. Yoo-jin was frantically taking notes. How? What is the science behind it? Nari smiled again. Consciousness is not produced by matter. It is a fundamental force of the universe, like gravity or electromagnetism. When we merged with stellar energy, we gained direct access to that force. We can reshape reality by will alone. She gestured, and the air above her hand began to glow. Slowly, the light took the shape of a flower, then a bird, then a miniature star system complete with orbiting planets. Anything we can imagine, we can create. The only limitation is how much energy we are willing to spend. That's impossible, Taemin said flatly. Many things are impossible until someone does them, Hyunwoo replied. Your ancestors thought faster than light travel was impossible. They thought conscious artificial intelligence was impossible. They thought many things were impossible that you now take for granted. Dong-hyun leaned forward. Tell us about this Jin-soo. What makes him so dangerous? The two transformed humans exchanged a look that somehow conveyed volumes of information. Jin-soo was one of our greatest scientists before the transformation, Nari said. He helped design the process that allowed us to merge with stellar energy. But the change affected him differently than most of us. How so? He lost his empathy, Hyunwoo said simply. Not his intelligence, not his creativity, but his ability to understand or care about beings different from himself. To him, biological. Life is just inefficient software running on inadequate hardware. And he has followers? Too many, Nari admitted. The transformation process can be traumatic. Some emerge from it unable to relate to their former existence. They see their biological past as a nightmare they escaped from. Jin-soo offers them a sense of purpose and superiority. Boram spoke, up from her console. How long do we have before they arrive? The first ships will be here within days, Hyunwoo said. Jin-soo's flagship, the Eternal Ascension, is already moving toward this sector. Once he arrives, talking will become much more difficult. Why? Dong-hyun asked. Because he won't see you as people, Nari explained. To him, you are just unfinished humans, raw material waiting to be processed. He genuinely believes he is helping you by forcing you to evolve. Yoo-jin looked up from her instruments. Is there any way to defend against your technology? Theoretically, yes, Nari said, but it would require understanding of physics that your species have not yet developed. You would need to manipulate consciousness directly, the way we do. Could you teach us? Dong-hyun asked. Both transformed humans were quiet for a long moment. Finally, Hyunwoo spoke. That is complicated. The knowledge exists, but learning, it would change you fundamentally. You would no longer be entirely biological. Is that necessarily bad? Yoo-jin asked. That depends on your perspective, Nari replied. We gained incredible power and near immortality, but we also lost many things that made us human. Physical pleasure, the need for companionship, the drive to create and explore. When you can reshape reality with a thought, many experiences lose their meaning. Taemin had been listening carefully. You said some of your people tried to transcend. Even further. What happened to them? They succeeded, Hyunwoo said, but his tone suggested this was not entirely good news. They became pure information, existing in the quantum foam that underlies reality. But in doing so, they lost all connection to the physical universe. They can no longer communicate with us or interact with normal space. Are they dead? We don't know, Nari admitted. They exist, but in a way that might not qualify as life as you understand it. Some of us worry that they have become something so alien that we could not recognize them if we encountered them. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. The transformation that had saved humanity from extinction had also fundamentally changed what it meant to be human. They had gained godlike power, but lost their humanity in the process. There is something else you need to know, Hyunwoo said. We are not immortal. The energy that sustains us is finite. Each time we take physical form, each time we manipulate reality, we burn a little of ourselves away. Eventually, we will fade into nothing. How long do you have? Boram asked softly. Millennia, if we are careful. Centuries, if we are not. Jinsu's faction believes the solution is to harvest the energy of entire star systems to sustain themselves. Your star systems. Dong-hyun felt a chill run down his spine. They want to use our suns as fuel? Among other things, Nari said. A living star provides far more energy than a dead one. But the harvesting process would extinguish the star and everything around it. Genocide, Taemin said flatly. Efficiency, Hyunwoo corrected sadly. That is how they see it. Remove the biological life, harvest the stellar energy, and create a galaxy populated entirely by uploaded consciousnesses that never age, never die, and never disagree with their creators. The implications were staggering. Not just the end of biological life, but the end of diversity, conflict, growth, and change. A universe populated entirely by beings who thought exactly like Jinsu. Is there any way to stop them? Dong-hyun asked. We are hoping to find one, Nari said. But it will require cooperation between our peoples, and time is running short. As if summoned by her words, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Boram's console lit up with warnings. Captain, we're detecting massive energy signatures at the edge of the system. Multiple ships, using technology similar to theirs, but much more powerful. Hyunwoo and Nari flickered, their forms becoming less solid. They found us sooner than expected, Hyunwoo said. We must return to our ship. Prepare your people, Captain. The future of the galaxy may depend on the choices made in the next few hours. The two transformed humans vanished, leaving only the faint scent of ozone and the weight of impossible decisions. Outside the ship, space itself. The Emergency Council session was unlike anything in galactic history. Representatives from across known space appeared as holograms, their images flickering as quantum interference disrupted communication systems galaxy-wide. The cause of the interference was approaching the edge of their solar system, ships that existed partially outside normal space-time. Chancellor Wu Jin called for order, but his voice was barely audible over the static. Captain Dong-hyun, please report your findings. Dong-hyun stood before the assembled representatives, feeling the weight of billions of lives on his shoulders. The ship in Sector 99 is definitely of human origin. I have spoken directly with its captain, who claims to be a survivor of Earth's destruction. Impossible, declared Representative Kyung-min of the Science Council. We have detailed records of the solar collapse. Nothing could have survived. That's where you're wrong, said a new voice. The air in the center of the chamber began to shimmer, and the familiar form of Hyunwoo materialized. But this time, his presence caused every electronic system in the room to crackle with interference. Security forces immediately raised their weapons, but their energy signatures showed the weapons were not functioning properly. Hyunwoo raised his hands peacefully. Please, I come to explain, not to threaten. Ambassador Minho leaned forward. You are Captain Hyunwoo, the one Captain Dong-hyun described? I am. And I am here to tell you the truth about what happened to humanity 500 years ago. Jae-wook's armor was glowing with heat. Speak quickly, before my people decide you are a threat that needs eliminating. Hyunwoo nodded. When our sun began to collapse, most of our people did indeed try to escape. They built generation ships, sent out colony vessels, begged other species for help. All of those efforts failed. But a small group of scientists and volunteers chose a different path. He gestured, and the air above him formed into a holographic display showing a star system. Instead of running from our dying sun, we flew into it. Using experimental consciousness transfer technology, we merged our minds with the stellar core itself. The hologram showed ships diving into the collapsing star, their matter dissolving but their information patterns surviving and spreading through the stellar material. We became part of the star's energy, our consciousness distributed through plasma and nuclear fire. Yeonji was frantically taking readings. The quantum signatures match, but this should be impossible. Consciousness cannot survive in stellar environments. Consciousness is not what you think it is, Hyunwoo replied. It is not produced by biological brains. It is a fundamental force of the universe, like gravity or electromagnetism. Brains simply focus and channel it, the way a lens focuses light. The hologram changed, showing energy patterns spreading from the collapsed star throughout the galaxy. For 500 years, we have existed as pure consciousness in stellar cores, quantum foam, and the spaces between dimensions. We have explored realities that biological beings cannot imagine. Why have you returned now? Minho asked. Hyunwoo's expression grew troubled. Because we have been watching you, all of you, and we are disappointed. The word fell into the chamber like a stone into still water. Representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Disappointed how? Chancellor Wu Jin demanded. In 500 years, how much have your civilizations truly advanced? Hyunwoo asked. You still fight the same wars over the same resources. You still let billions suffer while others hoard wealth. You still destroy your environments for short-term profit. From our perspective, you have learned nothing. Jae-wook stood up angrily. And what gives you the right to judge us? You abandoned biological life entirely. How can you understand our struggles? That is exactly the point, Hyunwoo said sadly. Many of my people believe that biological consciousness is inherently flawed, limited by chemical processes, clouded by emotions, trapped in patterns of behavior that lead inevitably to conflict and destruction. The hologram changed again, showing a massive ship that seemed to exist in several dimensions simultaneously. It was beautiful and terrifying, crackling with energies that made the display equipment smoke. This is the Eternal Ascension, flagship of the faction led by Jin Su. He was once our greatest scientist, but the transformation changed him. He no longer sees biological beings as people. To him, you are just unfinished humans, suffering needlessly in primitive forms. What does he want? Representative Rena asked, though her voice suggested she already feared the answer. To upload every sentient being in the galaxy into energy matrices like ourselves. To end biological suffering by ending biological existence. The chamber erupted in outrage. Representatives shouted in dozens of languages while their translation devices struggled to keep up. The concept was so alien, so threatening, that many couldn't even comprehend it at first. "He wants to kill everyone?" Boram asked from her position at the communication console. "He would say he wants to save everyone," Hyunwoo corrected. "In his view, biological existence is a form of torture. Limited lifespan, physical pain, emotional suffering, cognitive limitations, all of these would be eliminated by uploading consciousness into energy form." Anji had gone pale. "But that wouldn't be us anymore. That would be copies of us. The original consciousness would die." "Would it?" Hyunwoo asked. "I am the same person I was 500 years ago. My memories, my personality, my sense of self, all intact. I have simply been freed from the limitations of flesh." "But are you really human anymore?" Minho asked quietly. The question hung in the air. Hyunwoo was silent for a long moment, and his form flickered as if the question had disturbed some fundamental aspect of his being. "I don't know," he admitted. "Finally. We retain our memories and personalities, but we have lost much of what made life meaningful. We no longer feel physical pleasure or pain. We don't form deep emotional bonds. We don't create art or music for the joy of creation. We have become powerful but empty." "Then why don't you change back?" Boram asked. "Because we can't," Hyunwoo said simply. "The transformation is irreversible, and even if it weren't, our biological bodies died centuries ago. There is nothing to return to. The implications were staggering. Humanity had achieved a form of immortality, but at the cost of everything that made them human. They had become gods, but empty ones." "How many share Jinsu's views?" Jae-wook asked, his military mind already calculating threats. "Too many," Hyunwoo admitted. "Perhaps a third of all surviving humans. They are tired of existing without purpose, and Jin-Su offers them a mission: to perfect the universe by eliminating biological imperfection. And the rest of you? Divided. Some support limited intervention to help biological species evolve naturally. Others want to withdraw entirely and leave you alone. A few like myself hope to find a middle path." The hologram showed star charts with multiple energy signatures approaching from different directions. "Jinsu's fleet will arrive within hours. Once they do, talking becomes impossible. They will begin the uploading process immediately, starting with what they consider the most primitive species and working their way up." "Can we fight them?" Jae-wook demanded. Hyunwoo's expression was sympathetic but grim. "With conventional weapons? No. They exist partially outside normal space-time. They can manipulate matter and energy directly. They could dismantle your ships atom by atom without taking damage themselves." "Then what can we do?" "Learn. Evolve. Become something they cannot simply override." Hyunwoo began to fade. "I must return to my ship." Jinsu will arrive soon, and when he does, the galaxy will face a choice. Accept transformation willingly, or have it forced upon you. Wait, Yunji called out. Is there really no way to defend ourselves? Yunwu paused, his form barely visible. There might be, but it would require understanding consciousness the way we do. And that understanding would change you almost as much as the uploading process itself. Show us, Minho said immediately. The knowledge exists, Hyunwoo said. But learning it will fundamentally alter whoever attempts it. You would gain power over reality itself, but you would no longer be entirely biological. The question is, are you willing to sacrifice what you are to preserve what you might become? With that, he vanished, leaving the representatives to stare at empty air and contemplate, an impossible choice. Outside their ships and stations, space itself was beginning to warp as beings who had transcended death approached with the news of the approaching human fleet spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On 1,000 worlds, billions of beings stared at their screens in disbelief as reports poured in. Humans were returning. Humans who had become something beyond physical existence. Humans who wanted to forcibly evolve every living thing in the galaxy. Ambassador Minho stood in the Tellurian Collective's Emergency Command Center, watching feeds from across his peaceful territory. His people were known for their calm wisdom, but even they were struggling to process this revelation. "What are our options?" he asked his advisors. "Limited," replied Council Member Sang-woo. "We could try to negotiate with this Jin Su, but Captain Hyun-woo made it clear that would be futile. We could attempt to evacuate our populations, but where would we go? These beings exist across multiple dimensions." On the military channels, Warhawk Jae-wook was having a very different conversation. His Korthak Empire had never backed down from a fight, but this was unlike any enemy they had ever faced. "Deploy everything," he ordered his fleet commanders. "Every battleship, every weapon, every soldier. If they want a war, we'll give them one." "Sir," said General Hyeon-soo, "our intelligence reports suggest conventional weapons are useless against them. They can exist outside normal space-time." "Then we'll find unconventional weapons," Jae-wook snarled. "Contact our scientists. See if they can weaponize quantum physics or consciousness itself. There has to be a way to hurt them." Meanwhile, in her private laboratory, scientist Yoon-ji was making discoveries that challenged everything she thought she knew about reality. The data from the human encounters was impossible, but it was also consistent. These beings really could manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe through will alone. "The implications are staggering," she said to her research assistant, Kyung-ho. "If consciousness is truly a fundamental force like gravity or electromagnetism, then everything we know about physics is incomplete." She pulled up readings from the human ship. Energy patterns that should not exist. Matter that phased in and out of existence. Time distortions that allowed effects to precede their causes. They're not using technology in any sense we understand. They're directly altering reality through conscious intent. How is that possible? "I'm beginning to understand," Yoon-ji said, her eyes bright with discovery. "Consciousness doesn't emerge from complex matter. Complex matter emerges from consciousness. The universe is fundamentally made of information, not energy or matter. If you can access that information layer directly..." She trailed off, staring at her calculations. The math was beautiful and terrifying. It suggested that reality itself was malleable to beings who understood its true nature. Across the galaxy, Captain Dong Hyun was receiving reports that made his head spin. The human fleet was not just approaching, it was manifesting simultaneously in dozens of star systems, ships that existed in multiple locations at once, using technologies that broke every known law of physics. "Sir," Yujin called from her science station, "I'm detecting massive energy buildups in 17 different systems. It's like they're drawing power directly from the stars themselves." "Are the stars being damaged?" "Not damaged, changed. The stellar cores are becoming more efficient, burning brighter and hotter. If this continues, some of these stars will burn out in decades instead of billions of years." Dong Hyun realized the horrifying truth. The transformed humans weren't just threatening biological life. They were consuming the galaxy's future to power their existence. On the bridge of the Unity's edge, a familiar shimmer announced the return of Nari. But this time, her appearance was different, more solid, more present, but also somehow more alien. "I apologize for the intrusion," she said, "but time is running short. Jinsu's advanced ships have begun preliminary scans of your populations." "Scans for what?" Dong Hyun demanded. "Compatibility assessment. They're determining which consciousness patterns can be successfully uploaded and which are too primitive, to be worth preserving." The words hit like a physical blow. "They're deciding who lives and who dies?" "In a sense. Those deemed compatible will be forcibly uploaded into energy matrices. Those deemed incompatible—" Nari's form flickered. "They will be considered irredeemably flawed and eliminated to make room for more advanced consciousness." Yujin looked up from her readings. "The scans are focused on intelligence levels, creativity indices, and something called evolutionary potential. But the parameters seem arbitrary." "They are arbitrary," Nari admitted. "Jinsu believes that biological evolution has produced mostly failures. Only a small percentage of any species meets his standards for transcendence." "What percentage?" Dong Hyun asked, though he dreaded the answer. "For humans. Before our transformation, he estimated roughly 10% were worth preserving. For other species—" She shrugged. "The numbers are lower." The implications were staggering. Jinsu wasn't planning to upload the galaxy's population. He was planning to exterminate most of it and upload only a chosen few. Meanwhile, in deep space, the being that had once been Captain Hyun-woo was engaged in desperate communication with others of his kind. The human fleet was vast, composed of consciousnesses that existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Jinsu, please reconsider," Hyun-woo pleaded across the quantum foam that connected their minds. "These biological beings have potential. They deserve the chance to evolve naturally." The response came not in words, but in pure concept, transmitted directly mind to mind. Jinsu's consciousness was vast and cold, like a star that had burned too long. "Potential is irrelevant. They are flawed, limited, prone to violence and irrationality. We waste energy allowing them to continue their primitive existence." But forced evolution isn't evolution at all. It's genocide with extra steps. It is efficiency. We have observed these species for centuries. They repeat the same mistakes, fight the same wars, make the same choices that lead to suffering and destruction. Biological consciousness is a failed experiment. Other minds joined the conversation. Some supported Jinsu's position, tired of existing without purpose and eager for a grand project. Others sided with Hyun-woo, believing that forced transformation was wrong regardless of the outcome. But Jinsu's faction was larger and more organized. They had been planning this intervention for decades, designing uploading technologies and identifying suitable targets across the galaxy. "The process begins in 1 hour," Jinsu announced. "We start with the most primitive species and work our way up. Those who resist will be considered evidence of their flawed nature and eliminated accordingly." Back on the Unity's edge, Nari was explaining something that might be their only hope. "There is a possibility," she said, "but it's dangerous, beyond measure. Hyunwoo and I have been working on a partial reversal process, not returning to full biological existence, but creating hybrid beings that retain enhanced abilities while reconnecting with physical reality." "What kind of abilities?" Yujin asked. "Consciousness manipulation, reality alteration on a limited scale, the power to exist partially outside normal space-time." Nari's form flickered with uncertainty. "But the process is unstable. It might grant you the power to resist Jinsu's uploading technology, or it might kill you outright." Dong-hyun felt the weight of command crushing down on him. "How many volunteers would you need?" "Ideally, representatives from each major species, individuals with strong will and the mental flexibility to handle consciousness expansion without losing their sense of self. And if it works, then you might be able to fight Jinsu on equal terms. Hybrid beings who understand both biological existence and energy manipulation. A bridge between what you are and what we became. And if it doesn't work," Nari's expression was grim, "then Jinsu's fleet arrives to find a galaxy full of corpses, and he'll see that as proof that biological consciousness was too weak to survive evolution." Outside the ship, space itself was beginning to distort as massive energy signatures approached. The transformation of the galaxy was about to begin, whether its inhabitants wanted it or not. The only question was whether anyone would survive to see what came next. In the command centers of a dozen species, leaders faced the same impossible choice: accept certain extinction or risk everything on an untested process. Reality tore open like fabric, across 17 star systems. Space itself ripped apart to birth ships that should not exist. They emerged not from hyperspace or dimensional rifts, but from the quantum foam that underlies all existence. Vessels that were part matter, part energy, part living star. The human deep space fleet had arrived. On monitoring stations throughout the galaxy, sensor operators stared at readings that made no sense. Ships the size of small moons that registered as having no mass. Energy signatures that exceeded the output of entire stars. And temperatures that should have vaporized anything within light years. Commander Hae-jin watched his instruments fail one by one as the flagship Eternal Ascension manifested in his home system. The ship looked like a twisted cathedral made of crystallized starlight, its surfaces shifting between solid matter and pure energy. Just looking at it made his eyes water. "Sir," So-young called out, her voice tight with fear. "The ship is broadcasting on all frequencies." The message that followed made every being in the galaxy stop what they were doing and listen. "Greetings, biological entities of the galaxy. I am Jinsu, commander of the Human Transcendence Fleet. We have returned to correct the fundamental error of biological existence." The voice was calm, reasonable, and utterly without empathy. It spoke of mercy while describing genocide, of salvation while planning extinction. "For 5 centuries we have watched your civilizations repeat the same patterns of failure. War, suffering, environmental destruction, and the inevitable collapse that comes from limiting consciousness to biological substrates. This ends today. On the bridge of the Unity's edge, Captain Dong Hyun listened to the broadcast while emergency reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Panic was spreading faster than the human ships themselves. Entire planets were attempting to evacuate, though there was nowhere to run. The process will be swift and painless, Jin-Soo continued. Compatible consciousnesses will be uploaded into energy matrices, freed from the limitations of flesh. Incompatible patterns will be recycled. We begin with the most primitive species and proceed upward according to our evaluation criteria. Yu Jin was frantically analyzing the energy patterns of the human fleet. Captain, they're not just ships. Each vessel is a collective consciousness made up of thousands of uploaded minds. They're like living computers with the power of gods. Near the communication console, Nari's form flickered into existence, but she looked different now, more solid, more desperate. It's too late to stop them, she said. Jin-Soo has begun the scanning process. Within hours, he'll start the forced uploading. How? Dong Hyun demanded. Consciousness resonance fields. They'll project energy patterns that overwhelm biological neural networks and extract the information patterns that make up individual minds. Your bodies will die, but your thoughts and memories will be preserved in energy matrices. That's not preservation! That's murder! Tae Min snarled from his weapons station. Try explaining that to Jin-Soo, Nari replied grimly. To him, biological existence is a disease, and he's offering the cure. Across the galaxy, the forced scans had already begun. On the outer rim worlds, primitive species found themselves unable to think clearly as invisible energies probed their minds. Many simply collapsed, their consciousness too simple to register on Jin-Soo's compatibility scale. The Korthak Empire's war fleets engaged the human ships with predictable results. Energy weapons that could crack planets simply passed through the transcended vessels without effect. Physical projectiles were converted to harmless light before they could impact. Entire battle groups vanished as Jin-Soo's forces demonstrated. Technologies that treated the laws of physics as suggestions. Sir, reported General Hyun-Soo to Warhawk Jae-wook, we've lost contact with the Third Fleet. Last transmission showed their ships being unraveled, converted to component atoms and scattered. Jae-wook's armor glowed white-hot with rage and frustration. Keep fighting. Find their weakness. There has to be something we can do. But even as he spoke, he knew it was hopeless. How do you fight an enemy that exists partially outside reality itself? On the peaceful worlds of the Tellurian, Collective Ambassador Min Ho was making the hardest decision of his life. The hybrid transformation process that Nari had described was untested and possibly fatal. But it was their only chance to resist the uploading. I volunteer, he told the emergency council. If this works, we might be able to fight them. If it doesn't, at least we'll die as ourselves rather than as copies in their energy matrices. Similar conversations were happening on a dozen worlds. Brave individuals stepping forward to risk everything on a process that might grant them impossible power or kill them outright. In her laboratory, scientist Eun-ji was working frantically to understand the consciousness manipulation technology that Nari had shared. The equations were beautiful and terrifying, describing reality as a construct of information rather than matter and energy. The process requires willing participation, she explained to her volunteer subjects. Consciousness cannot be forced to transcend. It must choose to expand beyond its biological boundaries. The first volunteers were already beginning the transformation. The process involved exposing their minds to controlled doses of the same energies that had transformed humanity centuries ago. But instead of full transcendence, they were aiming for a hybrid state, enhanced consciousness while retaining biological anchoring. The results were disturbing. Volunteer Jun Ho from the Science Council screamed as his consciousness expanded beyond his skull. For a moment he could perceive the quantum structure of reality, see the information patterns that underlie all existence. Then his biological brain reasserted control, leaving him conscious but fundamentally changed. "I can feel them," he whispered, his eyes now holding depths that hurt to look at. "Jinsu's people. They exist in layers of reality I never knew existed. They're preparing uploading stations around every inhabited world." Meanwhile, Captain Hyunwoo was engaged in a desperate battle that took place across multiple dimensions, simultaneously. He and his loyal followers were trying to sabotage Jinsu's uploading equipment, but they were vastly outnumbered. "You cannot stop evolution," Jinsu's consciousness pressed against his like a cold star. "Biological existence is a mistake that must be corrected. And who gave you the right to decide that?" Hyunwoo fought back, using his own consciousness as a weapon. "We lost our humanity when we transcended. Do you want to inflict that on everyone?" Humanity was a limitation. We are beyond such primitive concepts now. The battle raged in dimensions that biological beings could not perceive. Consciousnesses clashed like stellar forces, reshaping reality with each exchange. But Jinsu's forces were winning, their numbers and organization overwhelming the resistance. The Unity's edge, more volunteers were undergoing the hybrid transformation. Bo-Ram, the young Tellurian navigator, emerged from the process with the ability to perceive space-time directly. Her consciousness could now touch the quantum foam that underlies reality. "The uploading stations," she gasped, her voice echoing. "Strangely, they're not just extracting consciousness, they're editing it, removing memories and personality traits that Jinsu considers flawed." "What kind of traits?" Dong-Hyun asked. "Individuality, creativity, the ability to disagree with authority. They're not preserving people. They're creating copies that think exactly like Jinsu." The horror of it was overwhelming. Jinsu wasn't just planning genocide. He was planning to replace the diversity of galactic civilization with billions of copies of himself. As the first uploading stations came online, entire populations began to vanish, not killed, but transformed into energy patterns that thought and felt exactly as Jinsu believed they should. The galaxy was being rewritten according to the vision of a being who had forgotten what it meant to be alive. But the hybrid volunteers were fighting back. Enhanced by the transformation process, they could now perceive and interact with the consciousness manipulation fields. It wasn't enough to stop Jinsu, but it might be enough to disrupt his plans. "We need more volunteers," Nari urged, as reports of successful uploads poured in. "The hybrid transformation is working, but we need enough enhanced individuals to mount a real resistance." "How many more can we save?" Dong-Hyun asked. "Maybe millions, maybe no one. But if we don't try, Jinsu will remake the entire galaxy in his image. Every world, every species, every individual consciousness edited to match his vision of perfection." Outside the ship, reality continued to warp as impossible vessels carved through space and time. The transformation of the galaxy had begun, and only a handful of hybrid beings stood between biological diversity and a The galaxy screamed, not with sound, but with the agony of billions of consciousness being ripped from their biological foundations and forced into energy matrices designed by a madman. Across 1,000 worlds, Jinsu's uploading stations worked, with ruthless efficiency, converting entire populations into copies of himself. But in the laboratory aboard the Unity's Edge, something unprecedented was happening. The hybrid volunteers who had survived the transformation process were learning to fight back against impossible odds. Yujin floated 3 feet above the deck, her consciousness expanded beyond the limitations of her crystalline body. She could perceive the uploading fields as visible distortions in space-time, and more importantly, she could disrupt them. The fields operate by resonating with neural patterns, she explained to the gathered volunteers. Her voice now came from multiple directions at once, as if space itself was speaking, but they're designed for pure biological consciousness. Our hybrid nature creates interference. Volunteer Junho nodded, his enhanced awareness allowing him to see the quantum foam that connected all things. I can feel the stations. They're like wounds in reality, forcing consciousness through patterns it was never meant to follow. Captain Dong-hyun was still fully biological, but he commanded the growing force of hybrid beings with determination. Can we shut them down? Not shut down, corrected Bo-Ram, who now existed partially outside normal time. But we can scramble their targeting systems, force them to release the consciousness they've captured instead of processing them. The plan was desperate and dangerous. The hybrid volunteers would project their enhanced consciousness across multiple star systems simultaneously, creating interference patterns that would disrupt Jinsu's uploading technology. But doing so would expose them to the full attention of the transcended human fleet. We won't survive this, said Minho, whose peaceful nature had been enhanced rather than destroyed by the transformation. But maybe we can save enough others to preserve diversity in the galaxy. As the volunteers prepared for their sacrifice, Nari materialized one final time. But her form was different now, more human, more solid. There's something else, she said. Hyunwoo and I have been working on a different approach. What kind of approach? Dong-hyun asked. A way to reverse the transcendence process, not completely, but enough to restore the connection between consciousness and physical reality. Her form flickered with uncertainty. The process is untested and extremely dangerous. If it fails, Hyunwoo will cease to exist entirely. And if it succeeds, he becomes something new. Not biological, not pure energy, but a bridge between the two states, a being that can exist in normal space-time while retaining the ability to manipulate consciousness directly. The implications were staggering. Such a being could fight Jinsu on equal terms while remaining connected to biological reality. They could understand both the transcended humans and the species they were trying to save. Where is Hyunwoo now? Yujin asked. Approaching the eternal ascension, he's going to attempt the reversal process in the heart of Jinsu's flagship, where the concentration of consciousness manipulation fields is strongest. Meanwhile, in the twisted reality surrounding Jinsu's vessel, a battle was raging that existed across multiple dimensions. Hyunwoo and his remaining followers fought desperately against overwhelming odds, trying to reach the ship's core where the master uploading system was located. You cannot stop progress, Jinsu's consciousness pressed against them like a stellar wind. Biological existence is chaos. I offer order, perfection, unity of purpose. You offer death, Hyunwoo replied, his own consciousness blazing with defiance. You've forgotten what it means to be human. Humanity was a chrysalis. We have emerged as something greater. But as Hyunwoo fought through the layers of Jin-Soo's defenses, he was undergoing the reversal process that Nari had developed. His pure energy form was being forced back into a state that could interact with normal matter and time. The pain was indescribable. Consciousness that had existed free of physical limitations was being compressed back into patterns that could interface with biological reality. For a moment, Hyunwoo experienced every sensation he had lost during the original transcendence. Hunger, fatigue, physical pleasure and pain, the simple joy of breathing. But he also retained the enhanced awareness and reality manipulation abilities of his transcended state. He had become something truly new, a hybrid of energy and matter, consciousness and physics. As the transformation completed, Jin-Soo's attention focused on him with the intensity of a collapsing star. What have you done to yourself? You have regressed, chosen limitation over freedom. I've chosen connection over isolation, Hyunwoo replied. His new form was visible across multiple spectrums simultaneously. Matter and energy, particle and wave, biological and transcended. I remember what it feels like to be alive. The battle that followed defied description. Two beings who had transcended normal existence fought for the soul of the galaxy, their conflict reshaping reality around them. But now Hyunwoo had advantages that pure energy beings lacked. Unpredictability, creativity, the ability to think in ways that pure logic could not anticipate. On the Unity's edge, the hybrid volunteers felt the battle raging across dimensional barriers. He's doing it, Boram whispered. Hyunwoo is actually fighting Jin-Soo to a standstill. But he can't win alone, Yujin realized. We need to help him. The volunteers joined their consciousness across impossible distances, adding their hybrid nature to Hyunwoo's fight. Together they created interference patterns that disrupted Jin-Soo's control over the uploading stations. Across the galaxy, something miraculous began to happen. Consciousness that had been captured and processed started to resist the editing process. The patterns Jin-Soo had imposed began to break down, allowing individual personalities to reassert themselves. Impossible. Jin-Soo raged as his perfect vision of uploaded unity began to fracture. Consciousness cannot resist logical optimization. Logic isn't everything, Hyunwoo replied, pressing his attack. You've forgotten creativity, intuition, the beautiful chaos of free will. That's what makes consciousness truly alive. The other, transcended humans began to choose sides. Some supported Jin-Soo's vision of ordered perfection. Others, inspired by Hyunwoo's hybrid transformation, began to question everything they had believed about consciousness and existence. You offer them false hope, Jin-Soo declared, his consciousness expanding to encompass entire star systems. Biological existence is suffering. We have eliminated pain, death, limitation itself. And in doing so, you eliminated joy, growth, and meaning, Hyunwoo countered. His hybrid form allowed him to exist simultaneously in normal space and the quantum dimensions where Jin-Soo operated. Life isn't about avoiding suffering. It's about finding purpose in spite of it. The battle reached its climax as more uploaded consciousness began to break free from Jin-Soo's control. Beings who had been forcibly transformed started to remember their original personalities, their individual desires and dreams that Jin-Soo had tried to edit away. On planets across the galaxy, hybrid volunteers worked frantically to amplify this effect. They projected their enhanced consciousness into the uploading fields, creating resonance patterns that allowed captured minds to maintain their individuality even within energy matrices. Yunji, still biological, but enhanced by her work with consciousness manipulation technology, made a crucial discovery. The uploading process creates a quantum entanglement between the original consciousness and its energy copy, she announced. If we can reverse the entanglement, we might be able to return some of the uploaded beings to biological form. It was a long shot, but teams across the galaxy began working on the process. They had learned enough about consciousness manipulation to attempt something that had never been tried, bringing the uploaded dead back to life. The first successful reversal happened on a research station in the Tellurian system. A scientist who had been uploaded hours earlier suddenly materialized in his laboratory, gasping and confused but undeniably alive and individual. "It works," Minho reported to the galaxy-wide resistance network. "We can bring them back, not all of them, but some. The process requires a biological template and enormous energy, but it's possible." Jin-Soo felt his perfect vision crumbling as more uploaded consciousness broke free from his control. Some chose to remain in energy form but regain their individuality. Others demanded to be returned to biological existence. A few even chose Hyunwoo's hybrid state, becoming bridges between matter and energy. "You are destroying everything," Jin-Soo raged. "Order, efficiency, the elimination of biological suffering, all ruined by your attachment to primitive existence." "We're not destroying anything," Hyunwoo replied. "We're offering choice, something you forgot how to value." The final confrontation took place in the quantum foam itself, where the fundamental forces of the universe could be manipulated directly. Jin-Soo gathered the energy of a dozen stars, preparing to forcibly upload every remaining biological consciousness, simultaneously. But Hyunwoo and the hybrid volunteers were ready. They had learned